Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to part two of emotional intelligence as a Muslim. And I just want to say, yet again, my mic's not working. So you will have to, unfortunately, put up with this audio, which is not fantastic. But anyway, here we go. In part one, we mainly spoke about emotional dysregulation, which is that reactive self that we can have, that when we're triggered by something or our needs are not met, that we can have like a meltdown or an outburst, or we can shut down in our body. We can go into avoidance behaviors. So we spoke about some nervous system responses and reactive responses that we can have when our needs are not being met or when we've been triggered. And they were at fight, flight, freeze, and please. And I asked you guys to have a look at in what areas of your life do you fit that category, and basically do like a self audit. And that self audit is priceless. When you audit yourself and you put up somewhere like where there's the deficits, not so you end up feeling like there's something wrong with you, but so you can look at like, okay, this is where I end up getting reactive. This is where my needs are not being met. You can then actually proactively and visibly see where you might feel agitated or annoyed or hurt or deprived. And then you can go back and give yourself what you need. What you give yourself could look tricky. I think that's where people get tripped up and that's where they see a professional. But you can have a go and see these are the areas where I know I'm not getting connection, or I'm not getting support, or I'm not getting, might be a sense of security. You're not getting that. And what can you do for yourself, or how can you validate yourself whilst you are still in the middle of something? I think that's really important. So that was basically part one talk. It was all about emotional dysregulation and identifying where you can get dysregulated. Now I'm going to go into emotional regulation. So emotional regulation is when you can take emotional responsibility, that you are not defensive. So if people come and tell you what they experienced, you don't deny their experience of you. You can clarify what you've said and done and what your intention was and what you thought you said or did. It is an emotionally, I've actually lost words for right now. Emotionally regulated person will validate how you're feeling, and then they might reiterate what their intention was and apologize that they didn't intend to hurt or harm you. So that's taking emotional responsibility. It's actually honoring someone else's emotions as well as honoring your own emotions, taking accountability where you've had the slip ups, not denying any of it. So let's say you were secretly jealous and you spoke in a way that was passive aggressive, where you're throwing out little comments. You're not going to deny that. You're actually going to self reflect and say, actually, I was not feeling really resolved. You also don't have to admit it completely to hurt the other person's feelings if you know they're vulnerable. You can just simply own that you're not in a resolved space, and that you don't intend to make them feel this way, and that you're up for like connecting in a healthy way in the future. So it's basically being able to problem solve through tough situations and take accountability. And it's also being able to sit with uncomfortable feelings and also sit with the discomfort of someone else's uncomfortable feelings, if that makes any sense. So if you're having a meltdown, an emotionally regulated person can hear you out without taking it personally. They can even hear you out when it comes to you saying something negative about them. They won't take it personally. They'll want to know because they want to have a very genuine relationship with you. And imagine if we could do this within families, like there would be much more cohesion. So to get to that emotional regulated space, what we firstly need to do is when we're feeling something, it starts with us cultivating a really healthy relationship with ourselves. So step one would be notice the feeling and acknowledge it. So notice the feeling and just acknowledge what it is. I'm feeling edgy. Why am I feeling edgy? I'm actually feeling afraid of this, and this. Or I'm feeling riled up. Why am I feeling riled up? I'm actually feeling angry. So notice what you're feeling in your body. Actually do a few internal body scans during the day, just like a little tap into your body and just take a little self note of how you're feeling. And also when we're not in our calm, we're often like breathing fast or too slow. So we're either a bit edgy or stressed or anxious, or we're a bit down and depressed. So just taking a moment to breathe in and have a self check and see, like, where am I at? What's going on? Do I feel edgy? Because what people usually do, they usually end up feeling quite stressed and anxious. And instead of addressing it, they will just turn to their soothing behavior. And that soothing behavior might be some sort of procrastination. Maybe they'll eat something, they'll go to some sort of avoidance of the actual issue, and they'll try and calm down their nerves. So if you can actually take charge of that from the get-go and actually notice and almost be looking for where you're not in your calm, then you can actually settle yourself beforehand, just like you would settle a child. So the first is acknowledge the emotion. The second is allow it. Allow it, and once you give voice to it, and give yourself some private space to feel it or express it. You might allow it by journaling. You might allow it by calling a friend and voicing it, or to someone or a family member. You might simply just plant yourself on the ground. So stand up upright or sit in a chair with your feet planted on the ground. And this is called orienting or grounding, where you're getting your nervous system in the present moment. You're noticing the floor underneath your feet. You use your eyes or your senses to notice your surroundings. So breathing in the air through your mouth or through your nose and noticing the air through your airways, noticing the color of what is in your vicinity. And if you're touching something, like noticing the texture. So with your feet, the texture, with your hands, the texture. It might be a warm cup of tea that you're drinking, just noticing the warmth on your hands and like breathing into your heart. And doing that for a few reps is going to calm your nervous system down and stop like producing all that stress hormone. That is another way to allow it to come out. So first was acknowledge, second is allow. The third is to try to understand what's behind the emotion. So emotions are very separate from logic. So you might logically feel crazy for feeling that way. And I wouldn't do that. I would say, okay, that is my emotional self. It's not going to be logical. My emotional self has developed over all of that emotional exposure I've had from zero to this present date. And that emotional experience may have been one where there was a lot of emotional neglect, which was common, especially for our generation growing up. It wasn't deliberate. It was just common having that emotional neglect. So it might be that you're feeling a certain way, but it's not stemmed in any logic. And that's where it's good to actually then do the fourth step and actually process that emotion. Ask yourself, logically, does this make sense? If it doesn't make sense, what do I feel like I need? Do I just need to have some downtime? Do I need to go and connect with someone? Do I feel really hurt? Do I need to speak out my insecurities with someone, or my concerns or my worries with someone? What is it that I need? And I would go through that systematic process and actually do like an emotional detox. For some people, they have to do something called emotion coaching. And it's basically really tapping into the feeling that you're feeling, because it most likely is stuck. And you can do something soothing, like put a hand on your heart and just feel the first emotion that's coming up. And it might be annoyed. And then you just voice out aloud the following emotion, and then the following emotion, and then the following emotion, whatever's coming up for you in your system. And in that way, you're doing a bit of an emotional detox, because often what we do is we ignore what our body is telling us. So if we're feeling anxious or stressed, we ignore it to the point that it stacks up and then we're having like an outburst. And so we want to avoid doing that. And we want to get very intuitive about how we're feeling during the day, and actually start the day with that. Start the day grounded. And alhamdulillah, our deen's really beautiful with that. Even like the tasbih Fatima that you do after your salah, actually internalizing that. So internalizing like subhanallah, for example, really taking that in and asking yourself, like, what are all the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is glorious? And then the second one is like, alhamdulillah. I would take this to this minute level, that when I open my eyes and I can see depth and color, how can I extend like a shukr for that? Like, alhamdulillah, I can see. Alhamdulillah, I've got skin protecting my body. Alhamdulillah, I can taste. And for some of us, we cannot. Alhamdulillah, I can see my family around me, or I have a job, or whatever the case may be for you. Like really taking note of what is, and especially in your dire circumstance, like even in your dire circumstance, it might be a really ugly circumstance with someone or a situation, seeing what is the lesson. If life was a teacher to me, what is the lesson that I am learning? And what is this person showing me? And what boundaries do I need to enforce? And how am I meant to use my voice in a compassionate, kind way to assert a boundary or to communicate something? So what is this opportunity giving me as growth? So if you see life's challenges like that, and you can look at it as a challenge if you find challenges exciting. I do. Some people might rather like switch that for life's opportunities instead of challenges. But when you're given an opportunity or a challenge that feels difficult, looking at it, that how is this designed to actually make me stronger? And what are the steps that I need to do so I'm not stuck in the hardship and the suffering of it, but I'm actually stepping out and creating change for myself. So that is what it is in a nutshell. I would go and grab that pen and your post-it notes and have a look at in what areas were you reactive in part one. And then in part two, see what grounding techniques you can use and try that emotional regulation method where you're actually noticing the emotion, calling it out. So acknowledging it, then you feeling it and allowing it, and then seeing the hidden signs behind it and see how you go, inshallah. That's it for this week. And then inshallah, I will be posting another video soon on the other segment, inshallah. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.